Back in 2024, when Donald Trump was running for president, he liked to claim that all of the federal statistics showed that crime was going down were all fake. They were all fake.
Unbelievably crooked Joe Biden is going around trying to claim that crime is down. He says crime is down. Crime is so much up. The FBI crime statistics Biden is pushing are fake. They're fake, just like everything else in this administration.
But fast forward a couple of years, and today, President Trump went to Long Island, to the New York City suburbs, to celebrate those very same statistics. With a crowd of uniformed police officers cheering behind him, Trump claimed that the latest FBI data shows that his administration's policies are what has brought crime down from those hellscape levels under the Biden administration. But here's the problem with that argument. What those statistics actually show is that crime has been dropping since 2022. And look, falling crime rates are something to be celebrated. No argument there. But there's something a little bit jarring about Donald Trump claiming to be this great scourge of criminals. I mean, for starters, Trump's brand new personal lawyer turned Attorney General Todd Blanche told the assembled police officers today that anyone who touches a federal law enforcement officer, quote, in any way inappropriate will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which is a little hard to square with the fact that his boss began his current term as president by pardoning hundreds of people charged with assaulting Capitol Police and other officers. And then this morning, the New York Times is out with a report highlighting the Trump Justice Department's pivot to focus on small-time fraud, like, say, a Los Angeles grocery store cashier who is accused of a few $1,000s in food stamp fraud. A Department of Justice spokesperson explained it to the New York Times this way, quote, pursuing only the largest dollar cases while ignoring smaller ones would send precisely the wrong message, that low-level fraudsters are immune from federal prosecution. Okay, but what message does this send when it is the other way around? When the full weight of the federal justice system is brought to bear on the low-level fraudsters, while largest dollar cases are dropped? President Trump has pardoned dozens of convicted fraudsters, and his Justice Department has dropped cases against more. Many of those people were convicted of millions or hundreds of millions, or in at least one case, over $1 billion in fraudulent schemes. And many of them, of course, donated money to Trump before getting their clemency. Though the White House insists that is all, of course, unrelated, as they do. And this week brought yet another sign that the White House may not be as committed to law and order as it claims. No kidding. I mean, this was how the New York Times described the move. The Trump administration is moving forward with a plan to scale back scrutiny of the shadowy shell companies that criminals use to launder money and traffic drugs. The Atlantic, to give it to them, they were even blunter, calling the move a green light for crooks. This is all, of course, referring to the fact that Trump's Treasury Department says it's no longer going to enforce the Corporate Transparency Act, which was passed, I would note, overwhelmingly by Congress a few years ago, and written in part by, wait for it, a senator named Marco Rubio. Wonder what happened to that guy. Haven't heard a peep from him about all this. Now, former Congressman Tom Malinowski, another author of the law, was pretty direct. Here's what he said, quote, I helped pass this law in 2020. Its purpose is to prevent drug traffickers, Russian and Chinese kleptocrats, and other international criminals from setting up anonymously owned companies to hide their money in the U.S. Trump's Treasury Department is doing this to help criminals. Why is the Trump administration doing this? I don't know. But it's certainly good news for rich Russians who want to buy his condos or Gulf Royals buying his fake crypto. Never holding back, Tom Malinowski. I love it. Joining us now is Tom Malinowski, former New Jersey congressman and former Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor in the Obama administration. It is great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Jen. Great to be with you.
Okay, let me start by for people who are just tuning into the story, maybe they've read the story, maybe they're just hearing for the first time about it. I just give a brief overview, but can you just explain in layman's terms what this law, the Corporate Transparency Act I mentioned, does and why it's important?
So imagine for a second that you're an international criminal, like you're a Russian oligarch trying to evade sanctions or a drug trafficker looking for a place to put his money. Most of us don't think of the United States as the place that would facilitate that. But in one respect, it was actually very easy because you could come to New York or Miami, find a lawyer, an accountant, to create as you mentioned, a shell company for you. A shell company is a company that doesn't sell any products or provide any services. It just exists on paper to help you move and store money. And then once you have that shell company, if you're good at your game, you can spin it off into 12 or 20 or 30 shell company subsidiaries. So you have this whole network of companies that are increasingly hard to trace to you because they're registered in some other person's name. And then you use one of those companies to open a bank account, like maybe in the Cayman Islands or in the Seychelles, someplace where there's a lot of bank secrecy. And now you're off to the races. You can do anything you want with that money, including in the United States, totally anonymously. Yes, you can buy a Trump condo with no public record attached to your name. You can even spend millions of dollars. You can donate millions of dollars to some dark money group that's trying to influence an American election. That's illegal if you're a foreigner. But if you use a shell company to do it, you probably can get away with it. Or you can just do it for mundane things like tax evasion or hiding your money from an ex-spouse or something like that. All of that is crime. And so this is why Congress, as you mentioned, totally bipartisan, passed this law. And what it says is simply that every company that is registered in the United States has to reveal its actual owner. And there's a simple form online. You got to put down your name and your address, your date of birth, and you have to upload a copy of your driver's license. Does that sound hard? That's what it required. And they just said, we're not doing it, even though it's the law.
It's not a laborious process, is I think what you're telling us to everybody. I mean, let me ask you a question. I feel like we ask every single day. Can the Trump administration even do this? I mean, they announced they're doing this. Can they do this legally? Isn't it the law that they collect this data?
Gosh, we're so quaint. Like this
I know.
Notion that,
it's so cute.
You gotta, there's this document. I don't know if you guys talk about it ever. It's called the Constitution. And
we do. Yes.
Yeah. He's got to execute the law passed by, anyway, whatever. The interesting question is like, who has standing to sue here? Because it can be challenged, obviously, but you have to have somebody who can show they've been harmed by the administration's refusal to enforce this law. And I'll tell you, one good candidate would be the state attorneys general. And here's why. When businesses register under this law, their company ownership information, it doesn't go on a public list. It's very, very private. It's held by the Treasury Department. And it's there for law enforcement agencies, including state law enforcement agencies, to consult with if they're investigating a crime. So, let's say you're a prosecutor in New York City, you're pursuing some financial crime investigation, you run into a shell company, some mysterious company that's involved in the dirty business. You can then apply to the Treasury Department to look up who is the real owner of that company. And so it seems to me, if you're the Attorney General of New York, you can say, hey, wait a second, like this is a tool we're using right now to investigate crimes. I forgot to mention, they're not just saying they're going to stop enforcing the law. They're saying they're going to destroy all of the data that has been submitted thus far. So if I'm the Attorney General of any state, I'd want to say, emergency injunction, don't delete that data because we're using it to solve crimes. And this law explicitly says we should have access to it.
Democratic attorney generals, if you're out there, they've not been shy about suing when needed. They can call you, I feel like, for some guidance here. The other thing this made me think about as I was reading about it is just the many different ways that Donald Trump has personally benefited from all of the different ways he's used levers in the system, attempted to change laws, gone around laws. Where does your mind go with that in terms of how he could personally, financially benefit from this?
We've been talking a lot about his crypto company. It's just amazing. He owns a crypto company. Just today, it got preliminary approval to become a bank. the Trump administration is approving an application from a Trump company to become a bank. It's crazy. And we know how this crypto company makes money for him. Mostly foreigners buy shares of it, or they buy millions of dollars of his worthless crypto. They lose money. They're doing it because they're buying influence with the president. And what this decision does is it would allow somebody to say, okay, I'm going to buy $50 million of Trump crypto. I'm just going to give him $50 million, but under the name of an anonymous LLC or company, not attached to my name personally, so that nobody really knows where that money is coming from. And my sense is that the type of people who are buying Trump crypto, they want him to know that they're buying it. They don't necessarily want the public to know. And this would facilitate that kind of criminality.
We're going to have you back on and talk more about that as well. Tom Malinowski, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.